It's posted
everywhere. I didn't know if you cared or not. I'm just giving you forewarning.
Got it.
Got it. I want to come up with like some cool, snappy intro, but I got nothing.
Well, if you've ever seen Top Gun, you would have thought of it.
Mm-hmm. What does Top Gun have to do with coming up with an intro?
It's got the need for speed, I think.
Oh, whatever.
God, I'm sticking
that in. Sorry.
That's a really cool intro, man.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Mile High Roundtable. I am Mundungus Creevy, along with my co-host, 6'10" Mexican KR Gledhauser and Mr. Bockins. Now, if you're new and you don't know who or what we are or why there's weird people on your screen, we are a fan-led, fan-based podcast all about the greatest team on the face of the planet, the Denver Broncos. Screw you, Raiders. We came together at the beginning. Yeah, we came together at the beginning of the season. The four of it, and then Mr. Boggins wouldn't stop bugging me, so I told him he could join if he wanted to. And here we are. Yay! We go live every Thursday at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 5 Mountain, 4 Pacific. And we are live on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. Go ahead and like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and follow us on Facebook. Now, obviously, the biggest news coming out of Denver Broncos this week is we got ourselves a general manager.
Yes,
woo! Yay! And
a good one.
Is this man right here.
Yeah.
George Paton, 24 years in the NFL, 14 seasons with the Vikings, 6 years as Vikings vice president of player personnel, 26 players acquired, re-signed with the Vikings since 2007 that have combined for 55 Pro Bowl appearances. His nephew is Rob Paton, who is a Broncos scout, who I'm told is going to be sticking with the Broncos, correct?
I believe so, yes.
That would make Thanksgiving dinner awkward if he didn't retain him, I guess.
Wouldn't it? Like, you're not going to be on this team. Leave. I'll see you. I'll see you at Thanksgiving.
You know what? Just before we came on the air, I read a funny tweet from our new GM who basically told his family, or his son, to be more specific, that they were leaving. And his son didn't want to leave Minnesota without Justin Jefferson. And George just basically told him, he's like, it's okay, son. We have Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton in Denver. So, hey, everything's okay now. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, yeah, except he had to name 2 to equal the 1. That's not cool.
And then the son said, what about Drew Lock? And he goes,
Yeah, well, that's why we're going to Denver.
So this is going to kind of be a big episode. We're going to try to get as much in as we can. What we're going to do is, since we now have a general manager, we're going to take a guess and try to figure out what the depth chart, the roster is going to look like next season. Now, it might come down to just having to do offense this week and defense next week. I don't know, because on my little sheet I printed out, there's a lot of red names on here, so we might not get to both sides. But today we're at least going to hit the offense. So, we'd been talking earlier about the 3 candidates when we didn't have a GM yet. There were 3 candidates. One said they'd stick with Locke. One said that they would sign a veteran. And then one said that they would go up and draft a rookie. Now, come to find out, Fontenot was the one that wanted to get the rookie. Kelly was the one that was going to stick with Locke. And Paton was the one that was going to look for a veteran to either start or back up Locke. So, based on that, we're going to try to figure everything out, because they'd said before that Elway wasn't going to be a big player in free agency. So that kind of changes philosophies here a little bit. So let's go ahead and start with the offensive line because that's probably the easiest one to hit right now. So we ended the season with Bowles at left tackle, Reisner at left guard, Cushenberry at center, Glasgow at right guard, and Dotson at right tackle. Now, the only two that I can say for sure are going to be here next year or starting next year is Bowles and Reisner.
Right.
Agreed.
No, an interesting comment that my co-host made the other day was what they can do if Cushenberry does not step up in terms of, the improvement that he's sort of showed at the end of the season. The Broncos old coaches can move Glasgow in his position at center, and they have a pretty good guard in Moody, which I'm totally for, and I'm surprised I never thought of it from the beginning. But Garrett Bowles did make a pretty strong comment on social media last week when he basically called out Juwan James, not so much because he sat out for the season, but just basically because maybe so. But also,
that's why.
But maybe because he wasn't in the trenches with these guys, and he has to basically come in and earn their respect. So I feel that the bar for Juwan James is really high, especially seeing how much money Denver paid him. And while it's not his fault that he chose to sit out, and you can't really blame him for that because he wasn't the only player in the NFL to do so, I do feel that the standard that is set before him, it can't be where he comes out with another injury. It can't be where his play is subpar. It just has to be where it can coincide and gel with this offensive line that I give Mike Munchak a lot of credit for in terms of, the way he turned around Garrett Bowles and the job he's done. Dalton Reisner has struggled, and so has Glasgow. So hopefully those guys can come back and show improvement next season. And we just got to get rid of Wilkinson. I don't know what ball and chain they have him tied to, if he's under some kind of contract or what have you, but he just has to go.
I think the thing with James that I kind of gathered was that it wasn't so much that he sat out the season. It seems like he's probably just distant from the team completely and not interacting with any of the guys. I mean, that's just pure speculation, but that's kind of what I've gathered from this, that he's just one of those guys that he sat out, and he truly sat out. And, meanwhile, these other players are gelling and trying to come together as a team, especially under these circumstances. And here's somebody that's proven to be pretty unreliable the last 2 years.
Sorry, I'm just opening up Mike and Ike's.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, I agree with 6foot as far as the Graham Glasgow being able to move to center. I think that we are pretty good when it comes to the center, the interior. I think. I mean, Dalton had kind of a slump year, but I think that was a lot of making up for Cushenberry. But you also got to remember that Cush, being a third-round rookie, COVID immediate starter, like he's got room to grow. And I think, and under Munchak, I think, just give him a little time, he'll be fine. In worst case scenario, you throw Glasgow over there and push up Moody, who hopefully will get a little bit better in pass pro. But he's a monster in run blocking. He just shreds people. But as far as, keeping his feet under him for pass blocking and stuff, he's had a little bit of issues. But I think we're pretty much good there. I'm really excited for this line next year if James actually decides to play, if he doesn't opt out again. I don't doubt that's going to be a primary position we're going to be looking at in the offseason, probably in the first 3 rounds of the draft, most likely, that we're just going to be getting that depth to just in case. I wouldn't even be surprised. I know they won't want to spend more money in free agency on the right side, but I mean, you have to. That's what, unfortunately, this is ending up being, where you have to make sure you have something there, because we can't do what we did this year with Elijah Wilkinson is trash there. Dotson was okay. I'm really excited actually about Calvin Anderson, and Calvin Anderson was actually stepping up quite a bit. And in my prediction, I put him as them re-signing or tendering him for to continue as just depth behind Garrett Bowles / right tackle, wherever he needs to go, because he's played both sides. So
I'll say who is the other backup? Schlotman?
Yeah.
Schlotman? Schlotenberg. I was like, that's not right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think as far as like offensive line goes, I don't think a lot's going to change. I think a lot of it's going to depend on right tackle. But I mean, it sounds like Dotson's not even coming back. I mean, they haven't really talked extension. He only signed a 1-year contract, so
he wasn't like a revelation or anything. Like he
was just solid. Like we thought he was really good because we're so used to everybody sucking.
He's the opposite of Moody. He's like great in pass or decent in pass pro, and then terrible in run D. Like anytime he has to leave the line of scrimmage and run downfield, he can't catch a block to save his life. And so maybe if we just make it so obvious and just like switch them when run play and pass play, maybe no one will notice.
Right.
It was just nuts. Okay, so yeah, like I said, offensive line, not much is going to change. I mean, even with Glasgow, even if you're a big fan of Mucci, they got too much money in Glasgow. He's not going to go anywhere.
No.
I kind of want to go to quarterback, but I think that's going to be the longest one that we talk about because that's the big one. But then any other position could lead to the quarterback. So we might as well just go into quarterback. So I think that's everybody's biggest question is with Paton coming in as GM. You know, he's been a big proponent of bringing in veterans. So what kind of veteran does he bring in? I mean, are we looking at a veteran that's going to be willing to sit behind Locke and teach, kind of like a Fitzpatrick or an Alex Smith or someone along those lines? Or are we talking like what I want is to go after Stafford? But, I mean, if you go after Stafford, Drew Lock is not the starter anymore. Stafford's automatically number 1 on the depth chart. So, I mean, like, I would love to have Stafford, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and as I read about Paton, he's interested in the draft, and he's interested in developing the guys that he already has. So, to me, I don't think it's going to be a Stafford type. I think it's going to be, you know, something a little less extravagant than that. But also somebody who's going to, you know, be back behind Drew Lock and show him the way and help him out. So,
yeah, I agree with you, Christy. Although I know there's been a lot of talks about bringing in Matthew Stafford and, you know, and trying to find a way where the Broncos can get around that huge contract of his. I just don't see Paton coming in and making a move that drastic. I could probably see that maybe like early start of the season, like maybe week 3, week 4, still anytime during the trade deadline. But to go that extreme and bring somebody of Stafford's caliber would be a really giant risk. You know, it'd be kind of like where we were with Joe Flacco. In terms of, Flacco's up in age, just like Stafford's up in age. They both have an arm, but Stafford's resilience is way better than what Joe Flacco had brought to the table. So with that in mind, I just don't think that even somebody like the new GM coming in is ready to hang up the cleats on Drew Lock. If he does go out and get a veteran, he'd probably go out and get somebody like a Fitzmagic. He could go out and get, you know, Alex Smith. We still have yet to see what's going to happen with Winston from New Orleans. I'm just saying it's a possibility. I'm not saying it will happen. There's going to be some veteran quarterbacks out there that shouldn't really make the GM go out and stretch. And if he does go out and stretch and gets somebody like Matthew Stafford, like you say, Mike, then yeah, Drew Lock stays as a starter are pretty much slim to none. And I wouldn't be surprised if the GM went and traded Lock sometime during the season because Lock doesn't want to, you know, ride the bench.
Did you just compare Stafford to Flacco?
I know.
Is that what you just did?
I sure did.
Really?
Write it down.
I sure did.
Holy crap.
No.
I sure did.
You know, if he trades for Stafford, and I have to tell you, that's the one. That is the one. If there's
you were pounding that horse months ago.
I picture him with this, and I love Drew. We all know that. But if the decision is to go after a an established quarterback that can step in there. A veteran presence with these young guys and these talented players with his competitiveness. I mean, he's 33. That's not old, especially these days in the quarterback position. I think that they could be lethal at that point if they had Matthew Stafford and his salary. The Broncos have a decent amount of money. They have a lot of players that they could actually dump to accomplish signing the free agents that we want back and accommodating a real quarterback salary. I mean, we were paying Flacco last year, but if he does trade for Stafford, what that will tell me is that the word from inside of Dove Valley after John Elway is basically gone is that the remaining people don't think he's the guy. I mean, they'd have to be giving feedback that that's the case.
Pretty much.
When Bryden Troy says, "What about trying to get Watson?" Hold on just a sec. I mean, Watson's been one of those ones that's been brought up, but with the amount we'd have to give up, not gonna happen.
Yeah, Watson very, very doubtful. But I will go back to Stafford. Absolutely, I think that Paton kind of comes off as a guy that is trying to come in to win, and I don't think you're coming in to win if you are going for a Fitz or an Alex Smith that's just going to kind of like semi-groom Drew Lock, who was ranked 32nd in the league. Like I think if you want to come in to if you want to push for the playoffs, you're reaching for Matt Stafford, and I mean you can easily get rid of so much cap by you dropping Casey, dropping Bouye, dropping Jackson. You can save so much money. You don't have to. You can restructure with Matthew Stafford. I'm sure he'd be very willing to get out of there and be open to restructuring his contract a bit. There's a million ways to work around it, and I think that would just be a sign to, and also like a sign to Broncos country from the new GM that we're trying to win here. We're not trying to just like we only have a certain amount of time with this young roster. Like Cortland's got a year left before we're looking at having to re-sign. We've got Chubbs coming up in his 5th year option. Like we have a certain window where we have, I mean, even our cap isn't that great right now, but we have a certain window with all these young players on offense that we need to have someone like Stafford to come in, say for whatever 2 years or something, and you're winning, but at the same time, maybe even Drew can kind of grow behind him. I mean, they're very similar type quarterbacks. Like that's the closest mirror, comparable I can think of. And you bring him in there, and then you have him just sitting behind, learning for 2 years, and then now you're in the end of Drew's contract year, and then it's kind of a messed up move from like a person point, but you come up on his contract, and now he's been a backup for 2 years, but he's learned something, so then you re-sign him to like a year contract or whatever, and then see where he's at, and then ship him off if you need to. But I think if you want to make a move in the playoffs, you have to, like, you're not going to do it with Fitz. You're not going to do it with Alex Smith. You're not going to or jump for a quarterback, which I don't think is going to happen in the draft because everyone's going to be jumping for those top 3.
Hey, don't you say bad things about my Fitz magic.
He's not going to. Sorry. It's not going to
calm
down.
Albert Doppers, we need to stay away from Stafford. I would love to know why you think that. I don't think anybody here can say that Stafford is a bad quarterback. I mean, he's had one good player and since he's been in the NFL, and that was Calvin Johnson.
Lions ruin players. The Lions ruin players, Pro Bowl players.
Raul, will they draft a quarterback in one of the first 2 round picks?
I don't see that happening.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
And that's one of those things where you got to figure out, like, if he's aiming more towards a free agent or if he's aiming more towards rookie. Because that's one of the reasons why we were trying to figure out who was going to be GM, because one was no veteran, one was veteran, and one was rookie. So
yeah, I mean, as far as the draft goes, you have 3 that are top 10 potentially. One is a little bit more of a risk, like Carson Wentz, because he's coming out of North Dakota State. And then you're dropping down into the lower tier of the first round with Mac Jones. And then after that, you're just kind of swinging for the fences in 3 and 4, maybe. I mean, past there too.
Yeah. I don't.
I'd hate to lose Stafford, but Detroit will never put him in a position to win. I'd love to see him win in Denver. Now, that goes to say, and I said this from the beginning, I back up whoever Broncos management puts in front of this team in terms of quarterback, even if I don't completely agree with them. So I caught a lot of heat for coming in and saying I support Flacco, and I caught some heat for coming in and saying I supported Keenum. So while they might not have my 100%, even though I may or may not agree with what they have to say or do or where they're coming from, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt that they can go out there and put on a hell of a show. But unfortunately, as Broncos fans, we've been so spoiled and seeing that happen when John Elway went out and brought in Peyton Manning. You know, when Peyton Manning came to Denver, it was just like, oh my God, it was like the second coming. Unfortunately, and I strongly believe this, because of Peyton Manning's surgery that he had where he had to miss an entire year, I kind of feel that limited his ability to fully heal and recover. And that actually hurt him where, you know, his play declined. His mind was still as sharp as ever, no doubt. But unfortunately, after 2014, he just wasn't the same. And he was lucky that the defense was able to ride him out into the sunset with a championship.
There's Albert. We need to keep Simmons, Shelby, Fant. We cannot afford a Stafford or a Watson. See, that's not really. I mean, right now we have what, $40 million in cap space.
You can afford a Stafford.
That doesn't even include getting rid of Jackson, or Vaughn restructuring. Like we can afford him. The one that we can't afford is Watson. Can't afford that. Stafford, I think, is pretty easy to afford. So I'm not worried about that. And then he says we need to pair home players and too many injuries with Stafford.
I actually wanted to address this. I mean, Stafford was completely healthy. I mean, I think he even played with injury this last year, and he continued to play through it. Also, if you have a Stafford and a Drew Lock behind him, you try to find similar quarterbacks. If Stafford goes down at one point and you've had Drew Lock who's been learning from Stafford and kind of watching things and building things, I mean, who else would you want to step in behind him? And then you're kind of really seeing who I want to move forward with in the future. So, I mean, I say you take the risk. I mean, you have to take risk in football, especially finding the most important position in sports.
I will say, Boggins, that the one thing I do find if they do go out and get Stafford is that, and somebody on this podcast may have mentioned this before, is that somebody needs to come in and be competitive against Drew Lock for his job. You know, because right now, if he doesn't have any competition, you know, obviously he's not going to get any from Jeff Driscoll, from Blake Bortles when he was here, and
Brett Rippon.
Brett Rippon, he's the future.
So if you do bring in somebody like Matthew Stafford, who can go on and take the reins for, like you said, 1 or 2 years, that can be initiative for not just for Drew Lock to learn, but also to come in if Stafford goes down. If the offensive coordinator can do like a wildcat play or something like they run in New Orleans, something like that. So there are more benefits than there are negatives in that aspect. I will agree. So it would just take somebody like our new GM to find a way to move money around and say, hey, we would like to have you in Denver if that's what the GM chooses to have.
And I mean, we can't, if you're going to talk injuries, I mean, you can't forget the fact that Drew Lock's been injured both seasons he's been in. So,
true.
I mean, and injuries doesn't really play that much into it because we've had to deal with Drew Lock injuries every season. Right. All right, so let's move to where are we going to want to go? Running back or wide receiver?
We could do running back.
Yeah, let's do running back.
Running back. All right, so we know that Lindsey's a restricted, right? So you can put a tender on him. And then Gordon is under contract, but he's gone for at least, I'm assuming, the first 3 games. And then we don't know if I would assume they're not going to, but we heard all through the season that there potentially could have been a clause in his contract where everything with the DUI, the Broncos could get out of it. I don't think they will, but I mean, we don't know. And if, let's say that someone wants to match that tender or beat that tender on Philip Lindsay and he's gone, then what?
Well, you know what? And I think it was Boggins who said this, that he wouldn't mind the Broncos going after Najee Harris if he was still up on the board. And at first I was kind of like, I don't think so. We have other needs. But after thinking about it, if the Broncos went ahead and did something like, move Lindsay and keep Melvin Gordon on board, I'd be okay with it. But it's a really big gamble, to be honest with you. And since I don't watch college football, I don't have highlights. I go by what I hear analysts and social media say. But I know his name has come up a lot in the last couple of weeks leading up to the national championship game. So I really like Philip Lindsay. He's the Colorado kid. He's had 2 really good seasons, but unfortunately this year injuries have really, really held him back. And even though he's been trying to be, the tough guy and push through and whatnot, it was just something that he couldn't overcome, where it was something that he can put on tape and say, hey, look, I'm worth keeping. But to Melvin Gordon's benefit, he was able to come in and say, yeah, I might be an overpaid running back like most people say, but when the chips are down and I need to, go out and get yardage and do this and do that, he can do it. Let alone the 4 dropped fumbles he gave up.
Well, and the thing that sucks is like Lindsay is so good. Like when he gets the ball, he's going to gain you yards. But we kept wondering at the beginning of the season, and during the season, why aren't they taking full advantage of Philip Lindsay? And then we kept hearing that, oh, well, he's got a small frame. He's a small running back, so he's going to get hurt all the time. And honestly, he does. He's gotten hurt every year, multiple times. So I love the guy. He's got a lot of talent, but if it's between Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay, I've got to stick with Melvin because he's not hurt. Fumbles you can fix. Getting hurt all the time, you really can't.
Yeah, I mean, Najee is kind of. Gosh, I would love to get Najee. I mean, I think he's a bit more of a pipe dream though, just because of positional value. I don't think. Could we get him at 9? Absolutely. There's no one that's going to pick him before 9, but I feel like he's more of a tail end of the first round, and unless we trade back up to get him, or he somehow falls to us in the second, which doubtful. I don't think we would, but I definitely could see ourselves potentially in the second or third round going after a running back, because I think it's going to become more of a need than people. It's kind of been a sneaky, the sneaky need that no one's really talked about that much. But I mean, we might not re-sign Philip Lindsay. We might not tender Philip Lindsay because I mean, Paton knows nothing of the Colorado kid, right? Like he knows nothing of it, and so I don't think there's going to be any emotional attachment to that whatsoever. Melvin Gordon's not even going to be playing for us for at least first 3-4 games. Royce Freeman is a Jag, so I mean it's going to be a lot more of a need than we think. However, the free agency market for the RBs right now is going to be loaded. So there's 1.5 million of them. So
do you have any options?
There's quite a few. I'm really hoping for like a Marlon Mack. I would really like a Marlon Mack because he would fit really well with Shermer, like in his pass catching backs and whatnot. But he's also coming off an injury, so. Yeah. But there's a lot. There's like Kenyon Drake and stuff, but he's gonna want too much money.
Well, and I know I heard Amir Abdullah because of the Vikings connection. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've always been a fan of Amir Abdullah, but I don't know. I mean, he is a pass catching back, but
yeah,
James White too. Yeah, James White.
Yeah, there's a ton of them, but I mean, that's one thing with this new GM is I would whenever we're looking for position, I would definitely check out that Vikings roster because him and Spielman have been together for whatever,
14.
like 10, 15, 14 years. Like
That's fair.
I
They were
think
in Miami.
that's going to be a connection, hard connection that we will definitely be picking a lot from them, I think.
So if it's not going to be Najee Harris in the draft, do you have any other running backs in the draft that piques your interest?
Yeah. I think like probably a Chuba Hubbard or gosh, what's his name? Trey that just went down. He just went down to the national championship.
Sermon.
Trey Sermon just went down. Probably a collarbone, so that's doable. There's a couple, and then it kind of just falls off at a certain. There's one guy that I wanted, but he recommitted for another year, Zamir White. But I would look for more pass catching backs than a bruiser, really. So bruisers are a little easier to find, but Najee would be the pipe dream. But I'm also afraid of Bama running backs because they use them and run them into the ground. They use their running backs a lot. So,
wow. Derek,
I mean, think about it. How many teams have 2 Pro Bowl running backs and they're thin at the position? There's so much uncertainty.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that need that. I mean, there's a lot of teams that have RB or good running backs right now. It's pretty crazy, actually. So he might fall. He might.
And I could see like Amir Abdullah coming in to replace like a Royce Freeman, but I don't necessarily know if I'd see him coming in replacing like a Phillip Lindsay.
I'd take a Rex Burkhead to come in and replace a Royce Freeman.
Really? Not Lindsay?
What do you mean?
Because they brought in Royce Freeman because he's the bigger back.
That's what I'm saying. Rex Burkhead is the bigger back instead of like I would rather have Rex Burkhead than I would have Royce Freeman.
I mean, Royce Freeman came into the league with a ton of mileage on him.
Freeman. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. That was one of the worries too.
From the Ducks, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now for the interesting one, other than quarterback, wide receiver. I know that Boggins, you would put because you were pushing for Stafford on Twitter, and I know that you would put like what it was 2 draft picks, Tim Patrick, in a trade for Stafford, right? Am I missing something?
No, I said second this year, third next year, and Tim Patrick and or Hamilton because the Lions literally have 0 receivers going in tonight. Like all of them are free agents, so they have to figure something out there.
Running for the road, no doubt.
Well, and this is like my pipe dream would be to have Sutton on one side, Patrick on the other, with Judy and Hamler trading off in the slot. Do we actually think that's going to happen, or do we think they're going to let Patrick go or try to trade him?
I think they'll probably let Patrick go. I think Cleveland is a work in progress, but I think he's a big receiver. He's not 6'5" like Patrick is, but he's a big receiver. He played that whole last game. He played on the outside, and he was catching balls left and right. And I think if you interchange, I mean, Sutton will always be on the left side, your left wide out. And then if you can interchange KJ, Judy, and Cleveland on the like middle to slot from slot to right wide out. I mean, I think you're looking good, and then maybe pulling another free agent or whatnot. I'm kind of sick of Hamilton, but I don't. He's kind of there. I don't know. I'd just rather pull in someone else with a little more semi upside, or at least a vet to come in and kind of give a good get Larry Fitzgerald. He's 38 and he's a free agent.
There you go. Nowadays, you can play until you're 45 and be completely fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like what? Okay, so like ideally, I would love to see Locke throwing it to, and again, Locke throwing or Stafford throwing it to Sutton, Patrick, Hamler, and Judy, and then Fant with Alberto. I mean, why would you? I get Tyree Cleveland. He does show upside, but I still think that Patrick has room to grow.
Well, like, I think he can get better.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean,
I like Mike's scenario with Cleveland as the 5th, Spencer and Hamilton gone. I've said it before. I'm just so not a fan of a kick returner that you really can't count on as a wide receiver, but taking one of the wide receiver spots. I know he played in the last game. You saw him, blocking for Jerry Jeudy on the long play, but I think we'd be perfectly fine without Deontay Spencer on the team next year.
Well, and I think a lot of that goes into special teams. I mean, that's where they've got Spencer and Hamilton right now. I mean, would we, if we give one of them up, are we going with another special teamer, or are we moving Hamler down to special, like double team, doing double duty with special teams and with offense? Or are we bumping Cleveland down there?
That's what 6th, 7th round and undrafted free agents are for.
Pretty much.
That's where you find your kick returners.
That works.
Yeah, I agree, Boggins.
So I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Denver is not going to draft a wide receiver. I would be a little upset if they did, at least in the top 2. In the top 2 rounds. If they draft a receiver in 1 and 2 again, I'm going to be really mad.
No, yeah, I'd hope so. Yeah,
Mike, that wasn't really a hot take. That wasn't like you were making a real.
That was a super hot take.
Making that prediction.
Yeah, I would say I could see them drafting a receiver, maybe 6th, 7th round or undrafted, whatnot, just to fill holes. It's an important position. I mean, you gotta. So that's about it, though. It's nothing special.
We've got the tight end room. I don't think that there's any question on who the starting 2 are with Fant and Alberto. But we had like 27 tight ends in the room this year. So how are we going to whittle that down? I mean, they had, was it Beck was the fullback?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do they keep Beck, or do they move somebody else, or do they bring in a fullback?
No, Beck is pretty good because he's been able to hybrid between fullback and tight end. So,
but he did fullback like twice.
I know, because that's not the type of system that Sherber runs. That's why they got rid of Janovich. Just barely a year ago, right? A year or 2 ago.
But those 2 times, Mike, he was unbelievable.
He was amazing.
yeah, he was. So I think that the tight end room is something that we may not have to, try to find in free agency or the draft. I think you're pretty good with Fant and Alberto once he recovers, and try to figure out a way to get Fumagalli untangled from his really weird contract situation where he can come and be the 3rd. And then the 4th, I mean, you can find somebody in free agency if you want, or get somebody undrafted, something like that. Because if I'm not mistaken, that's pretty much how they found Darren Waller from the last broadcast I heard.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I'd love for Fumagalli to be our 3rd, over the Frenchman, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or Jake Butt, who plays.
I just think we need a blocking tight end, though. That's the only thing. We don't have anybody that besides I keep saying Alex Beck, Andrew Beck. I mean, he's the only one that really has the. I mean, Fant's gotten a little bit better. Alberto has been
blocking one
to a certain extent, but he's missing a finger, bro.
What does that matter?
It's harder. So I mean, I think we'll definitely. I mean, we've had six in the room the last 3-4 years. So I think that we'll probably get another one off free agency that at least can block again, like a Vanette style. Even though he wasn't even that great at blocking, I'm not really sure why that happened, but we need better blockers. Alberto is trash at blocking, but he's a great vertical threat. That's absolutely.
Yeah.
What's interesting is we've been talking for a few minutes, and Jake Butt's name never came up as even being a possibility.
No.
He's on Denver.
I wish it was. He had such high potential. It just, I mean, what can you say about the poor kid? I mean,
right.
Yeah. 1.5 million injuries. It sucks for him.
He could have been the steal of that draft.
He was my fantasy football name. Jake Butt, tight end. It was great. Yeah.
Jake Butt plays about as much as the Nair spokesman. He just doesn't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
All right. So we're looking at. Well, okay. So what? I mean, are we still thinking Locke is quarterback, or are we going somewhere else? What was that?
I don't know.
Losing your voice there, champ.
I don't know what that was. Sorry.
I'd go. Most odds are he will start. I mean, because I think there's probably only literally two quarterbacks that have been thrown, names that have been thrown around that would start and meet. Like there wouldn't even be a question if you brought Matthew Stafford in. If you brought Deshaun Watson in, they would start. It wouldn't even be a question. But all the other ones, it's a question. Even if you brought a rookie in, there's a competition. There's a question. You bring Fitz in, whoever, Alex Smith, whatever. There's a question.
First, though, like let's say they move up in the first and they get one of the big three, whether it's
There's
Lawrence,
still going to be competition.
Fields, or I'm just saying like.
Even if you get Justin Fields or Zach Wilson, there will be competition. Absolutely. There's not even a question. I mean, they still have to learn the offense. They're going to be, Drew's going to have a leg up in that competition, and he's going to, potentially look better at first, and they'll probably play, halfway through the season before it starts getting underwhelming, and then they probably would throw in the rookie to see what he's got. But I don't. There's only literally two quarterbacks that I could think of that names have been thrown around that would actually start. So 90% chance that Drew Lock starts next year, unless we get those two.
And does anyone else cringe when they see Matt Ryan's name as a throw in as somebody that the Broncos could pursue? That guy, he's old. He's old.
I don't like the non-mobileness. That's my biggest problem.
Yeah.
He ruined us. He ruined us. But
are we worried about not having as mobile a quarterback with the line that we have now, though? I mean, the Broncos' offensive line was one of the top 10 lines for not allowing sacks this year. So
yeah, I don't think
are we that worried?
No,
right,
I think everyone blew that up
during the season. And Stafford's going to be 33.
Yeah, Stafford's only 33. I mean, that's
so.
Yeah, I'm all on Stafford, but
yeah,
I wouldn't mind Matt Ryan. Not my first choice, but
I wouldn't mind him for a 2-year contract. But his contract is insane. There's no way.
Yeah,
you worried about Stafford? No, him or if they went for Wentz, that's hard track. That's one of the worst.
No.
There's no way that he goes anywhere without restructuring his contract.
If they cut him today, they owe him $57 million. Like, it's not worth it.
Yeah, he's gonna tweet, "Cut me." Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck. So, all right. So far we're looking Bowles, Reisner, Cushenberry, Glasgow, James on the right side, give or take if he opts out or not. And then Sutton. And then did you want Cleveland on the outside or did you want Judy on the outside?
I would want Cleveland. I like him outside more.
On the other side of Sutton?
Yeah, and I think Judy would ruin people in the slot.
Yeah, that's we've been saying that all season. Is
those
Judy
cut
and
moves are dangerous,
spot.
man. Those cut moves are insane.
Yeah, if you had like an empty set against, oh man, I don't even want to think about it. Like, whew. If you got someone that could actually catch out of the backfield, even better too, like a quick guy, like how the Chargers have Eckler and then they had Sproles and whatnot. If you had what we have on offense plus one of them in an empty set, good God, like that's terrifying. And then someone that can pre-snap quick. That's the quick thought process. But
Albert,
Marcus, why didn't they try? So why didn't Judy? Before we get to Albert's question, and why wouldn't they have been using Judy in the slot more this year if that was going to be so dangerous?
He was our next biggest receiver.
I understand, but I mean,
he was sometimes he was in there. I mean, not a whole bunch. I mean, it was like in Carolina with they gave KJ a 9 right out on the outside, the big touchdown where he just I think he just double moved. He was a wide out there, so a couple times they used him, but not a ton, just because of primarily size. I mean, a lot of the times you're going to put your bigger boundary corners out there to go against, and you're not trying to throw KJ out there against one of those guys. He's quick, but that's about it. I mean, Jerry needs to bulk up a bit too, but because if you saw his first catch in the NFL when he had that cut back, I thought his legs were gonna snap in half. It made me really nervous. Those little tiny skinny chicken legs were just nervous.
So Albert asked, what about Mariota, whatever his name is. He's not a starter. I don't care how you pronounce his name.
I don't think that he would leave Las Vegas because he left a pretty good impression on John Gruden in their game against the Chargers. So it could be looking like, I mean, if one day Gruden wanted to, and or the Raiders in general, that they wanted to move on from Carr, Mariota can be that gap quarterback until they found somebody in the draft or whatnot.
But do you see them moving on from Carr anytime soon? No, he's not old.
No, and he's not bad either. I mean, Mariota makes $10 million a year, though. I mean, so there's a lot of money in that quarterback room there.
I mean, eventually you're going to come up to his contract year, and you're going to really have to question yourself whether or not he really advances the program. And I don't think, especially in our division, like I mean, imagine being this GM coming into this division, going from the NFC to this division, and having to know that you're in a division now with Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Herbert, soon to be Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Deshaun Watson. The list goes on and on. So, like, what's
the rookie's face? Number one pick last year.
Oh, Burrow.
Yeah, there you go, Joe Burrow.
Yep. All of those. Like, welcome to the AFC. Why would you come into a new team, look at our quarterback, look at his ranking, and then be like, you know what? I'm good. Like, I just don't.
Well, we had talked during the playoff games when about Washington. We saw Smith wasn't playing, so they had Heineke. Is that his name?
Mm-hmm. Taylor Heineke. Yeah.
Heineke. I was very intrigued with how he played, not only because, he's a backup coming in, but with how well he played. That gives Washington an option of, okay, do we stick with the younger quarterback who played well and could, has a high ceiling and could get better, and let Alex Smith go, or do we stay with Alex Smith? I personally am a huge fan of Alex Smith. Like, if they stick with Heineke and decide not to keep Alex Smith, I'm all in. Like, if we're not going to go get Stafford, go get Alex Smith.
Maybe.
But I mean, would they even let him go though? I mean, do you think they would have won that game if Alex Smith was playing?
I've read that Alex Smith is really tight with Daniel Snyder, actually.
Okay.
I can believe that.
I don't think.
Let's go.
That trade question.
Which one?
Possibly. I mean, Heineke played so
this one?
well. That diving touchdown.
I'll tell you right now, Canadian men, this would never ever happen. They would hang up on you really, really fast.
A whole lot more than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As far as Heineke, I mean, he played well. I liked his spirit. He was a boss. I loved his mobility, and I loved the one thing that Drew Lock. There's multiple things, but one of the things that I don't like about Drew Lock is his ball placement. He has no touch sometimes. Like, if I want to see one of those pretty arc balls that come down. Like the one that Heineke had in the corner of the end zone, that was gorgeous. That's an NFL throw. You don't 100% like laser every one of your throws that Drew tends to do because he trusts his arm way too much. That's what was really pretty. I mean, I would take him more. Heineke is way more of a backup to me still, but I I mean, in all honesty, like Drew is not that far out of that category now. So,
all right, we have Mr. Raul jumping back in. What changes can we expect on coaching that can help? I don't think right now we still got McMahon on the team. So
yeah.
I don't think a whole lot right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that's going to happen this year.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're in for year 2 of the Pat Shurmur show. So, but he's got a new boss to answer to, and it's not the guy who hired him. So I expect Pat Shurmur to be on a little bit of a shorter leash.
They are buddies.
Yeah, they are buddies. Because they did play together in that magical 2017 season.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think they're in different roles than they were back then. And I would expect that our new GM is going to want results. And if the offensive coordinator is not pulling them out, or players are struggling, he's going to have to go look for answers in terms of finding who can give and provide what.
We can't be that close. Yeah, too big on our face.
Too squishy. I don't like it.
And I'm going to stick with what I said all throughout the season. I don't think that the majority of the offense's problem was on Pat Shurmur. And there were some things that were head scratching and stupid, but I honestly believe that a lot of the stupid plays that were called is because he couldn't call the other play because Drew Lock couldn't do something, whether he couldn't complete it or whether he wouldn't see the read. Or I strongly believe that the majority of the issues with the offense and the play calling was more about Drew Lock than it was about Pat Shurmur. And I'm not saying he can't get better. We saw that he could progress in a very basic offense. But I believe that Shurmur wasn't as much to blame as Drew Lock was.
Yeah.
There he's back.
Hey, Glenn.
Okay.
I think a lot of it had to do with Drew, unfortunately. I mean, is Shurmur perfect? Absolutely not. But there was still a lot of it had to do with a growing quarterback who can't process quickly.
We were just hating on Drew Lock while you were gone, Glenn.
Yeah, boo.
Okay, so we got Bowles, Reisner, Cushenberry, Glasgow, James. We have Sutton, Cleveland, and then Judy and Hamler in the slot. We've got we'll split
as long as you didn't disappear. I figured that's what was happening.
We'll split between Stafford and Locke on quarterback.
You know what it is about Drew?
What?
We all want him to succeed. I mean, none of us want him to fail.
No, yeah, no one wants it. Yeah,
no, I want him to fail.
I would like a Super Bowl ring. Yes, please.
I would.
I would too.
Yeah. No, and again, nobody here is wishing or hoping that he'll fail, and if they are, then you can leave. You never hope that your starting quarterback fails. All I'm saying is that looking at how he looked in the season, you can't tell me that he succeeded. Mm-mm. And so, do I want them to go out and get a better quarterback? Yeah. If we can't get one, then at least get a backup that just in case we have that backup that can come in. But if we have a shot at a Matt Stafford or an Alex Smith, absolutely go and get them. I don't care about Drew Lock at that point. If it's like Matt Stafford or Drew Lock, sorry, not even close.
I'd agree.
But it all depends on what Paton has in store. I mean, like I think we said on the last podcast, it's been 10 years of Elway, so we have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, we could be looking at massive changes and not even know it.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, we could be even more patient. But and was he put in a perfect scenario? Absolutely not. With not being able to work with your brand. I mean, 2 of your starting receivers are rookies. And then you have a third rookie that ended up coming in towards the end of the year. Then you have another rookie tight end. Then you have COVID. Then you have a brand new offense, and you already have a quarterback that doesn't process real well. So it's just like a snowball effect. But this is the NFL and you're in the AFC. Like, we can't wait forever, especially like I said before, when you have such a young core group of players that you only have a certain amount of time before you have to start paying all of them. Like, that's a huge problem. And so you have to, like, we're almost in win now mode because we have such a high potential roster that you just have to go. And like, I can trust Fangio enough with the defense that you can kind of spend a little bit more on the offense, just finding that quarterback. I mean, I guarantee you, once we find a quarterback, we're going to be knocking on the playoff door. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, so Eric says, do you not think Locke will get better with the real offseason? I don't think that's really the concern. I don't have a concern that he's going to get better. My concern is that his ceiling is not as high as we thought it was. And so if there's a quarterback out there that has a higher ceiling, absolutely go get him.
Right.
I think a lot of people are blaming everything on the offseason, but at the same time, like, every other quarterback figured it out about halfway through the season, but Locke didn't. Like, Locke was basically operating on a Tim Tebow-sized playbook, and he just barely got that figured out. So do I think he's going to be that good of a quarterback? I don't think that Drew Lock is a quarterback that can have us win in the playoffs.
Right now, I think that Drew Lock's future could be in jeopardy.
A really good backup.
Not so much in doubt. And it all depends on what direction this new GM takes us in. If he goes and gets like a Matthew Stafford, for example, like some of us are speculating he could do, then yes. We have to keep in mind that the new GM does not have any ties to Drew Lock like John Elway did. So I think that this new GM, George Paton, is going to come in and he's going to make some moves that some Broncos fans are going to like, some aren't. And unfortunately, we have to kind of get to understand the idea and the fact that these changes need to happen because we're not the only ones that are trying to get better. Los Angeles, the Chargers, they're eventually going to get a head coach, and in some aspects, they'll get better. Kansas City, I can't say they're get better because they're already good. So we need to try to play catch up. So that way, whenever they do start to fault, then, we can go toe to toe with them. And the Raiders, as long as John Gruden's there, I think the Raiders are going to be a roller coaster ride. So
I'm sorry. Think about this though. Also, that Drew Lock is in the division with the Chargers, who have a stacked defensive roster, but they just haven't been able to capitalize on it. Well, they interviewed Robert Saleh today from the 49ers. Imagine if they got him. Like, you want Drew Lock against that defense? It's kind of
say what you want, but I mean, now you're looking at a not only a division with Derek Carr and with Justin Herbert and with Mahomes, you're also looking at Andy Reid. You're looking at John Gruden and possibly Saleh, whatever his name is. That doesn't even include Fangio, and you can only include Fangio right now on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're looking at 3 extremely good coaches and 3 extremely good quarterbacks. So you can't have a quarterback on your roster that's your starter that's maybe a playoff caliber quarterback. You can't have maybe.
And I'm sorry for the all the technical problems tonight, guys. But one of the things with our division too is that we have Mahomes and Herbert for many years to come. I mean, they're so this is something that if we have any hope of being a consistent playoff team, we better solve this problem now. I mean, there's no time to try to develop somebody. We got to get some real results quickly because these other teams and Chargers their record is bad, but their team is on the upswing. No doubt about it. So we've got a lot of competition that makes it very, very difficult, and we better get some results very, very quick.
Yeah, and I think that was another one of the big things with me was like I get him not having an offseason, but Justin Herbert didn't have an offseason, nor did he have an offense anywhere close to the talent level that we had, and he just crushed it as a rookie. And he's coming from college, So he's obviously got a new coach and a new offensive coordinator.
And an Oregon offense.
Yeah. And, I mean, you got Burrow coming in crushing it. I mean, you've got all these quarterbacks that are moving into different systems that have been able to figure it out. And they're like, oh, well, Drew Lock's got a new coordinator and he didn't have an offseason. Well, I get that, but neither did anybody else. And they were able to figure it out. So I'm not saying he's going to be a terrible quarterback. His ceiling just isn't as high as we thought it was going to be.
Well, that's why Urban Meyer, judging by the other talent in the division, Urban Meyer sniffing at the Chargers job was clearly to shake down the Jags for a little bit more money, because if you have the first round pick, almost $100 million in cap space, and you're in a division that doesn't include Patrick Mahomes, that's the job to take.
Mm-hmm. And to answer this Cousins question, do you think Cousins will be here? No. He's way too much guaranteed money.
They just re-signed him. Was it last year?
Yeah, yeah. He got
another big contract. So, no, that's not going to happen. All right, well that's going to about do it for us. I know we kind of jumped around a lot, but I mean we don't really have any for sure answers because we just got a GM sign and we have no idea what he's going to do. So, we can all have our wish list on what we want to happen, which is kind of what this is about. This isn't so much of this is what's going to happen. This is who I want. Which, I mean, being fans, that's kind of cool. We can do that. So we appreciate every single person that came into the chat. Go ahead and continue to leave us your comments on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. Let us know who you want to see come in, who you don't want to see, who you want to leave, whatever. Anything to do with the roster, let us know. We'll figure it out. Same thing with draft and with free agency. Find somebody you like and let us know who you want. And just a reminder, go ahead.
I was going to say, join us next week with your defensive wish list.
Yeah, we're going to have defense next Thursday. We're also going to have, we just had the first episode of Broncos Talk on Tuesday. We're going to have another one next Tuesday at 6:00. So make sure you tune in for that as well. It was a pretty cool episode. So make, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, follow us on there. 6:00 every Thursday. Broncos Talk, 6:00 every Tuesday. We will talk to you guys later.
Shout out to Mike Ho-Ho's Rich.
Boo, Rich.